Hey guys, welcome along to the channel. Just because we're overdosing on horror content right now from the audio podcast Hellmouth Hotline doesn't mean we're going to get nothing else done on this channel. I still have a mess load of shorts to do based on this DVD collection right behind me right here. And we do have the morals of Masters of the Universe shorts on the way as well. A lot of content, and yeah, we're just going to be doing pop culture, mostly classics at this point, and is the place to be if you're a pop culture nerd. And if I can be, you know, motivated enough to keep going regular, it should be a decent enough channel. But anyway, we're getting into the Nightmare on Elm Street and the Dream Child in this episode. It is the audio from Hellmouth Hotline, so check it out if you do like the podcast. Feel free to jump over there and give it a little follow. Hey legends, welcome along to Hellmouth Hotline. I'm your host, Rodney Stewart, and we're getting into A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 5, The Dream Child. Now this one here is incredibly interesting because it really does delve more into the origin of Freddy Krueger. It is a good movie with quite a lot of stuff squeezed in there, and the visuals and the effects in this movie are incredibly good. And there's a sequence in it later on in the movie that blends reality and with comic book style elements, and really good for its time. This film here doesn't seem it was just as successful as the rest of them as far as the amount of money that it grossed. They had an $8 million budget, fairly similar to the movie beforehand, and it grossed 22.1 million. And yes, it was a bit of a decline in box office receipts from Dream Warrior and the Dream Master. But still, had the highest grossing slasher film of 1989, but it did receive mostly negative reviews from critics. And I don't know, I think it's just never they started to really lean heavily into the celebrity status of Freddy Krueger, and it became a little bit more, well, I wanted to say light-hearted, but it is a slasher movie. A lot of people die in these movies, but there's a lot more humour and one-liners brought in for Freddy Krueger in the later movies, and it is what it is. Set in 1989, again a year after the previous film. Alice and Dan have started dating, and there's no sign of Freddy Krueger until one day, while taking a shower after having sex with Dan. That's the opening of the movie is them getting it on in bed. She has a vision of herself dressed in a nun's habit with a name tag saying Amanda Krueger on it at a strange asylum. Of course, having seen the previous movies, as the viewer, we already know this story and what happened with Amanda Krueger, but we're getting a little bit deeper into it in this film. In the dream, she's attacked by the patients, but she wakes up the next day. Alice is graduating from high school along with her new friends, Greta, an aspiring but reluctant supermodel, Mark, a comic book fan, and Yvonne, a hospital volunteer, and the high school swim champion. Alice confides her nightmare to Dan, who tells her she's in control of her dreams. As we know, Dan and her were the only two survivors from the previous film. On her way back to work, Alice finds herself back at the asylum, but big switch up here. She enters the dream world, or the nightmare world, without actually falling asleep. She finds herself back at the asylum, where she sees Amanda giving birth to a gruesomely deformed baby. Amanda tries to collect the baby before it escapes, but it sneaks out of the operating room. Alice follows the baby into the church where she defeated Freddy in the previous film, and the baby finds Freddy's remain and quickly grows into an adult, hinting to Alice that he has found the key to coming back. Alarmed, she contacts Dan, who falls asleep en route to see her. Freddy attacks and electrocutes Dan, turning him into a creature before veering him into oncoming traffic. This film here is good at, just like the previous one, the nightmare deaths and what happens to people within the nightmare getting killed blends fairly seamlessly into the real world. So it's the visual effects and that. He's on a motorbike, and Freddy kind of connects him into the machinery of the bike, and like he's one with the machine, sort of a deal. And it's for a nightmare. It's not fairly gruesome, but yeah, freaky enough. He dies in oncoming traffic in the street. Alice sees Dan's body in the van, dead, and then it comes to life to taunt her before she faints. Freddy animates Dan's corpse. Waking up in hospital, she hears the news of Dan's death and finds out that she is pregnant with his child. In the night, she is visited by a young boy named Jacob in the hospital. But the next day, Yvonne tells her there's no children on her floor, and there's no children's ward either. Alice then lets her friends know about Freddy and the whole backstory of who he is, where he came from, everything, killing kids, getting out of court on a technicality, getting killed by the parents of the original children that were killed while he was alive, burning them to death, all that sort of stuff. You know the backstory if you're listening to this podcast. That afternoon, at a dinner party at her home, Greta falls asleep at the table, and she dreams of herself snapping at her mother and ranting over her controlling nature before Freddy appears and forces Greta to eat herself alive before choking her in front of the laughing audience of the people around the table. That's a fairly freaky death scene because of how it is connected to Alice. The dream that Greta is in and what Freddy's doing to her manifests in Alice's house, and she opens the fridge and everything turns to, all the food in it turns to mould, and Greta appears coming out of the door of the fridge. So it's one of these sequences where it's not overly graphic, but it's just the idea of it and the way it's executed is just one of these things that kind of sticks with you a little bit even after watching the movie. Where are we at? There we go again. I have lost my place in my notes again. Greta falls down dead in front of her mother and their guests in the real world after being killed by Freddy in the dream. Yvonne and Alice visit Mark, who is grieving Greta's death. Turns out he was in love with her and just was scared to, pat and let her know his feelings. And a rift forms between them. He's not happy. He's kind of taking it out on the rest of them. Mark falls asleep and is nearly killed by Freddy Krueger, but Alice saves him before she's seeing Jacob again in the dream. Jacob hints... Did I even write that down properly? Yes, Jacob turns up in the dream again. Jacob hints that she is his mother, so the dream child is her unborn child. When she's dreaming, she's in the nightmare. She's seeing her unborn kid at about probably 6-7 years old. Alice requests that Yvonne gets her for an early ultrasound and discovers through a nightmare connection again that Freddy is actually using Jacob as a conduit to attack her friends, even when she's awake, and Freddy's been feeding them as victims to make him like himself. This is how everything's slightly different in this film. It's her baby and her womb. When it is asleep, Freddy can use the child's dreams to manifest himself so he can actually come after Alice while she's awake. It's a fairly ingenious idea in the movie. Yvonne and Dan's parents still believe in Alice is crazy, insist that she give them the baby when it's born, which Alice refuses. Alice and Mark then research Kruger and the nun Amanda, and realizing that Amanda was trying to stop Freddy. There's the sequence at the beginning of the movie where in the nightmare Alice witnesses Amanda Kruger giving birth to this kid. Amanda actually follows her but tries to warn her, but as the message is lost when Alice wakes up. They investigate her whereabouts and Alice goes to sleep, hoping to find Amanda in the asylum. While there, Freddy lures her away by threatening Yvonne, who has fallen asleep in a jacuzzi. This sequence is incredibly good in the movie. Like, the visuals are fantastic, the effects are great, but I do have to agree with what was said there earlier, that it's not as good as Dream Warriors or The Dream Master. It's just, it started to drop off, and that, well, you could call that a trilogy of films within the first five. They're all connected, but you know, the story that started in Dream Warriors has continued through The Dream Master and this film, and the third part just seemed a little bit weaker than the other two. Where are we at now? Okay, Alice rescues Yvonne, who finally, almost at the end of the movie, starts believing what she's been told for the better part of the movie. Mark falls asleep and is pulled into the comic book world where Freddy slashes him apart. That sequence alone is great. In this part of the movie, Mark, he's trying to stay awake to watch over Alice while she's in the nightmare, trying to deal with Freddy and, you know, sort out our friend Yvonne. But probably in this section of the movie is the one part where, you know, the Freddy Krueger movies have been incredibly good at blending the moment where one of the victims falls asleep and enters the dream, and as we got through the movies, that got more and more apparent when it happened. But this here was a fairly seamless blend where he's a comic book fan. He actually draws his own comics, and he's lying across the floor and he's reading like X-Men and all these different sorts of superhero comic books, and when he falls asleep he comes across this comic book that he's never seen before, and as he flicks through the pages of it, you as the viewer, you're seeing the photo or the comic book images, you know, the panels, and every panel you're seeing there, you're recognizing that as something that's happened earlier and earlier in the film. The more he goes through the book, the more you start to realize that this comic book is telling the story of the movie that we're sitting watching. And the last panel that he gets to that's actually drawn and finished is at the start of a page, and the rest of the blocks on that page and the page after it are all blank, and the image is of a guy on his stomach on the floor reading a comic book, which is exactly what Mark is doing at this point, and that's the point where he gets sucked into the comic book, and Freddy comes after him and takes him out, and there's a few one-liners out of Freddy and that part that just went beyond cheese. He dies, and that leaves Alice and Yvonne being the last one standing. Alice goes to bed, falls asleep to find Freddy and save her son, realising that Freddy has been hiding in her every time she fell asleep. She draws Freddy out from within herself. That's actually the dream child, her kid, tells her in the dream they lose Freddy, and he's like, he's hiding the same place he always hides, inside you. So she actually, and probably the most graphic detail in the movie is she actually physically grabs hold of her own face, and she turns into like the scarred skin of Freddy Krueger, and she starts pulling at her own skin, and the next thing she's ripped Freddy's head right out of her own head, and the one person starts to slowly become two as she actually physically drags Freddy Krueger out of her own body. For the year this movie was made, that was actually unbelievably well done. In the real world, Yvonne finds Amanda's remains at the asylum and joins the fight in the dream world. That sequence alone was good too. It's a bricked off room in the asylum tower, and Yvonne breaks through the wall, and we see this figure of the nun on her knees in like a praying position, and as Yvonne reaches to grab the shoulder, the body or the head turns and it's a skeleton. Amanda died in the shape of a nun praying, and the disfigured, rotted skeleton vanishes, and you see the ghostly image of Amanda, and she says thank you, to which she disappears and enters the dream world to come after Freddy. She encourages Jacob to use the power that Freddy has given him, and Jacob, the baby, the dream child, his face then turns into like the scarred version of Freddy as well, and tells Freddy to leave Alice alone because she's no longer of any use to him. Take me, I want to learn what you want to teach me, sort of a deal. To which Freddy is going to take him up on the offer, and Jacob, he unleashes Freddy's own power against himself. Freddy is pretty much ripped to shreds, and the infant form that he was in at the beginning, whenever he went looking for his destroyed body from the previous film, is what he ends up as again, and is lifted and absorbed by his mother, while Alice picks up a baby Jacob, and like the baby disappears, turns into light, goes back into her stomach. Something similar to what Amanda just did, and the last image we get to see of her is in the dream world. After warning Alice away, Amanda seals Freddy away in time, so the last thing we see is her at the end of this corridor in the nightmare world, and it's like Freddy's fighting against her to get out, and she's fighting to keep him in there. So that's kind of where it ends off for Freddy. And at the end of the movie, several months later, Jacob, now born, and Alice and her friends, they're out having a picnic. Her father's there, Yvonne is with her, and they're having a good time. Nice sunny afternoon, having a nice little family picnic. Everybody's hungry, they're getting their food together, and as the camera pans away, there's some kids skipping with a skipping rope nearby, and they're humming Freddy's rhyme, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. So it always ends off the same way. Freddy gets his ass handed to him, but there's a little opening at the end of the movie to say this might not be the end for Freddy Krueger. At this stage, they were just getting really used to pumping these movies out. They had a winning movie franchise with A Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy's Revenge. The first 2 or 3 movies hit big, and every time a new one came out, everybody went to see him. But by the time we got to The Dream Child, it was starting to lose its momentum slightly. So in the next review of Freddy Krueger, we're going to be doing what is the one that finished the franchise for me, and that was Freddy's Dead. Of course, it didn't end there. They brought him back for a few other things, but for me, those first 6 films were definitely the crucial ones in the series. And that's not to say we're going to stop at that. We're going to do the new Nightmare and everything else as well. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you in another episode very, very soon.